I think if it stopped today and everything went back to normal, we would quickly forget. But as time goes on, some of these grooves will create that new reality.
Hopefully we'll take the good of this, leave all the bad of this, and find our new digitized normal hopefully in the coming months here. All right, today we have Gary Plotkin with us, Head of Insurance Consulting at KPMG. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for taking time to chat today. What do you see as the greatest opportunity on the horizon?
Sure. So from an insurance industry standpoint, this pandemic, while devastating, has created a number of large opportunities across the insurance landscape. The first is a move to full digital. And along with that really is what I would consider to be speed to market. There was a lot of old thinking that said, we have to go slowly. We have to test this. We're not ready to move to a full direct interaction with our agents or with our insureds, right? We still need the paper. And lo and behold, in a very short period of time, every company was forced to move into this virtual model. Now, there are still some issues, right? How you get fluids in a life insurance policy. But it's amazing to me how quickly companies have adopted to that. And so I do think that one of the biggest opportunities here is a change in framework and thinking, right? No, we have to go slow. No, our community is not ready for this. It doesn't mean we jump, dangerously head first all the time, but really get over some of our old holdbacks from that perspective.
I think you made a really good point there. Those of us on the carrier side, I spent 10 years in underwriting. We got very used to legacy systems, and then you start digitizing, you start upgrading, but that only works if you also scrap the legacy thinking. If you switch over, you're not going to fully leverage technology until you have like a tech first mindset and you let go of that legacy thinking, you let go of that old way of thinking. So I love that point. I think that's so important. And obviously right now, even more important than it has ever been.
Absolutely. If you want to be able to conduct business, generate revenue, service your customers in their time of need, you have to be able to do it in a full digital model today.
Absolutely. So how do you think the pandemic will shape the future?
It's a big question. As someone who travels 3 to 4 days a week, being home has been interesting, I think, for both myself and my family, but it's made me more aware of my community. Right? Because now I'm not thinking about what's going on in New York City, right, or Minnesota or Dallas or London. My world is really my local surroundings. It's about the grocery store. It's about my neighbors. I'm hoping that we take that forward, right? The way we're helping each other, the way we're interacting, that sort of, think globally, act locally. How do I take some of that thinking? How do I take the fact that, we are all human beings, we are all suffering, and have the same exposures and really work well together. And over the last 8 weeks, I've really seen some great things. As I jump back into insurance, I mentioned the whole concept of a full digital capability. And that concept of going end to end across products and across components of the value chain is a real game changer. Some carriers have already started on that journey. Others are far behind, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out overall. But it really creates significant opportunity. The other couple of things I'd mention is for the last couple of years, we've been talking about a prevention agenda, right? So instead of simply paying claims, how do we avoid the need for those claims? And frankly, the pandemic is really driving us into that agenda, right? How do we start to identify where the larger threats of COVID pandemic or outbreaks will be, right? How do we start to help people while they're sitting at home in advance of other activities and the like? In addition, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to affect products in the insurance industry. Life insurers have to decide how to get around fluids, right, if you want to truly be digital, right, so for complex products from that standpoint. In the commercial space, there's obviously a fundamental change going on in small commercial, right, and the small businesses and how they'll survive and what they'll look like. let alone the concept of business interruption insurance, right? So there's a groundswell there. We will see some pretty large changes as the government and other entities start to get involved, but we need to relook at what business disruption means and how we insure for it and how we handle, activities around it.
I think a few of the things you mentioned there are also huge initiatives that can help the industry overall propel forward. I think about the two pieces that you mentioned of product innovation and prevention.
Yep.
The insurance industry overall, I think, just really struggles with a perception issue when it comes to many of our end insureds. And I think those two pieces, both innovating products and moving towards prevention, allow the industry to add so much additional value beyond the typical, the historical value of just the claims interaction. So I really think those are two really awesome pieces that can propel the industry forward. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, one other item that's come up with a number of my clients is cyber exposure, both from a product standpoint, but also from an internal cyber risk, right? When we were sitting in big offices behind large firewalls and lots of capability, it was one thing, but we are moving more and more access data and the like to people's home networks.
Right.
And so where's the exposure there? How do we mitigate that exposure, and how do we account for it in terms of, go forward cyber risk?
Yeah, cyber is one coverage that I think the risk of which is still vastly underestimated by a lot of businesses. We tend to see these large businesses in the news for cyber breaches, but that doesn't mean it's not happening to small business. So I think that's a solid point as well of all businesses of all sizes focusing on that and making sure that they A, have the coverage, and B, have the precautions in place for both in office and out of office exposures where there's some weaknesses.
Yep. It is interesting. I don't believe I've ever worked harder or longer. Now, I'm wondering if that's because I'm simply sitting in one place every day from about 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., right? I fundamentally miss the inefficiencies of travel, of having to jump into a cab, of having to walk to another meeting room, right? And sort of getting a break, maybe grabbing something to eat. Often my days are scheduled, half-hour blocks through, almost 11 or 12 hours a day.
Yep.
The other thing I've been looking forward to, and I'm starting to see, is more quality time, even at work. Because people are not traveling, right? And yet their schedules are busy. We have more time to interact, to shape ideas, to get to know each other, even if it's only, via video. And I'm finding that with many of my clients, they're taking time now to talk about future capabilities, art of the possible, where we're going to go. And this is all a long game, right? It is not about selling services or capabilities today or tomorrow, right, as we move back to BAU, but it's about building those relationships and really thinking about the future together from that perspective.
I think there's so many of us can relate to what you just said. I myself, I was on the road every week. I was, 2, 3, 4 flights a week, and missing the inefficiencies, I think, is something that so many of us didn't really think about consciously, is that, while we're waiting for our Uber or our Lyft on the way to the airport, or while we're boarding, that's time that's natural time built in for our brains to decompress. Yeah. So because we don't have that organically, we have to find a way to create that. That's really solid advice. I think something that we can all take forward, even, post-COVID world, is making those downtimes effective, because those breaks can really help you with your productivity in the long run. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. Really enjoyed your insights.
Thanks. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much. See ya.